what is that we were discussing yesterday is about bringing Hibernate into picture in the place of JDBC. Anyway, that was partially told, not completely. So what is that we do today is we will introduce Spring into picture. Well, the traditional way it was working is like we have a Amazon factory who will supply the beans, and we have manually written dispatcher servlet who will come and then handle the routing part to different controllers. That's the kind of stuff we have implemented previously. Correct? Now, what is that we are going to do now is we will bring Spring MVC into picture. Well, Hibernate is there. It's already there in its way. Well, it's already there. We don't touch that. Now, we will simply replace these two members, the factory who supplies beans and the dispatcher who route the incoming requests and the controllers who are handling the requests. Okay. This is what we are going to implement today. What configurations are required, what jars to be copied, how this can be done. We will do that today. Only that much, but nothing more than that. Now that we have brought Hibernate into picture, and then we have brought Spring also into picture, Spring MVC in fact into picture. In tomorrow's session, we just actually develop an a complete application, end-to-end application, which uses Spring MVC. Now in Jakarta, you will be seeing projects which are still using Spring MVC, which are a bit a legacy model of projects. You don't see servlet-based projects rare, hardly. Okay, but you will see one or two projects that are using Spring MVC. Am I clear? So learning Spring MVC is required. It is required. So you must know what is model and view, how it returns, what is a view resolver, all that kind of stuff you need to know. So I'll give a brief introduction on that one and then quickly convert our project into Spring MVC. We'll see the welcome page, running project, and then we will close our session today. And in tomorrow's session, what we will do, we will implement each and every layer, whatever is required. Am I clear? Well, so I don't touch my Amazon app, which is there. This one, I don't touch this part. I will take your help to convert this app into Spring MVC tomorrow. In today, we'll create a new web project. Repeat, new web project. Okay. So here I will go new dynamic web project. Please understand this is not Spring Boot, the one what we have created. Shopping cart application here, what you are seeing is a Spring Boot application. Am I clear? Which includes all of the configuration ready-made built-in. Now, what I am going to teach today is how do we do that part manually. Okay. So I am taking this as, let us say, Spring MVC app. So name of this is Spring MVC app. I have all the configuration as is. This is a plain dynamic web project which uses servlets kind of stuff only. No change, no much change, honestly speaking. So I come here and finish it off. Now that the Spring MVC app is been ready, uh, let me write down the steps involved. Step number one, create a dynamic web project with web.xml. And then what is the other step that we need to do? Second step is the default page, right? Create the default page. That's what we need to do, but slightly alter this step and then we will add required jars of Spring, Hibernate, JDBC, and whatever is servlet JSP jars into lib folder. See, aram se dekho. So I have just altered one step and I'm adding the jars part into step number 2. After that I have set this. Okay, so I have to make my application as a Spring MVC model. So what I will do is, as a step number 3, add configuration classes to make this app as Spring MVC web. And then I will change this web.xml, create the default page in respective path. Why I am saying respective path? We will see that as a part of the Spring MVC web. Okay. Well, after that, I have added this configuration classes and then default page. And when I run this one, okay, I will see the welcome page. Got it? And then here, when I say the configuration, make the Spring MVC web integrated with Hibernate also. Please understand. So it's that I have done my Hibernate related configuration also. And then as a step number 5, you have to add relevant entity, DAO, service, IMPLs, and controller respective view JSP pages, run the app. Okay. So, I mean, as per task, this is basically as per task. So for every task, you have to add, required entity, right? Required DAO, required service, IMPL, controllers, and everything. This is based on task. So we will start with a task. Am I clear? After we have done the configuration, we go with a small requirement and then we develop that one. And after the development part of this task is over, we run the app and see the output. This is what the task is all about. Okay, this is the expectation. After this project is ready, probably this is what we are going to do tomorrow. This part probably we are going to do tomorrow. Possibly if time permits, we will see this today itself. And then tomorrow we are going to implement the complete end-to-end app, which includes this one. And we will also discuss something called as a REST API. What is the REST API? How it has to be implemented? The purpose of web service. How do we call outside REST web services? How do we receive the response? All that stuff is going to be started later on to this. Now, all of this you are going to see here today and tomorrow is incoming request. Please understand. Someone is calling us and we are giving the response. I repeat, we are getting request and we are processing that request. We are giving the response. This is what you are going to develop today and tomorrow. And then from next week, by the way, day after tomorrow is a holy holiday, followed by Saturday, followed by Sunday. It's a long, big weekend. So I request you all to complete this app, whatever you are seeing today and tomorrow on the weekend. And when you come back on Monday, so far we have done something like, we are receiving requests, we are giving response. And from Monday, we will see how do we call outside third party web services and then receive the response. So the actual use of calling REST web services and the receive the response, and then with the response we will for process and then we return response back to someone. So we will actually act as a mediator, or we call it as a middleware. Now from Monday onwards, you will see how do we develop middleware, which will take request from a client, call some outsider, get a response, process that response, mix whatever is there in the DB, save the response, and then finally give the response from our end to the client. So that kind of end-to-end app is what you are going to see from Monday. You will also see the standards of what Jakarta follows, how the project architecture in general we follow in Jakarta, all that stuff from Monday onwards. तो ठीक है यार, स्टार्ट करेंगे. तो we are done with this first step. We have created dynamic web project and web.xml. And then what is the second step? We need to add the required jars of Spring Hibernate JDBC servlet JSP jars. So I have them available here in the softwares folder. I'll go ahead and add all of them one by one. Control C. Paste. Similarly, so here you could actually see a JDBC part, MySQL connector is also been copied. So the JDBC part is being done. Now you go to Spring MVC jars. These are all the jars. You can actually see JSP, JSTL, and Servlet API also as a part of this one. I do not require MySQL connector because it is already been copied. Control C. I'll go back here and paste. It is done. So my project now contains all of the jars that require for Spring and Hibernate. I refresh my project. Right. Now let me explain Spring MVC project architecture. Okay, before we go ahead and build anything, you need to understand what is Spring MVC, how it works basically, all that stuff. Yes. All right. So this is my structure. The one what you are seeing here is MVC structure. Okay. So on the top of this controller, by the way, I forgot to have this one. On the top of this controller, we have सबसे पहला we have our dispatcher. This dispatcher servlet is the one who receives actual request and then gives them to a particular controller. That's how it will work. This is the request and this is the response. Okay, so let me explain this slowly. Whenever there is a request coming, as usual, in Spring MVC, dispatcher servlet is being identified as a root servlet or the only one servlet who will accept every incoming request. It is said that anything coming on the name of application context slash will come to dispatcher servlet. That means anything coming after slash Amazon slash all will come to this dispatcher. Okay, so that is the meaning. Anything if it comes like localhost colon 8080 slash Amazon slash anything will always come to dispatcher servlet. So this dispatcher servlet will forward all the requests to respective controllers. Now each of these controller have some REST API URL configured in them in different functions, different methods. I might have many URLs like this I have registered with these controllers, and then dispatcher servlet identifies who is the corresponding URL that you are looking at and drops your request to that specific URL, and from there the service method starts. Am I clear? This is step number one. How the request is routed? Request always comes to dispatcher. Anything after the context path, this is what we call as web context. After the context path, anything coming, everything and anything coming over here will always come to dispatcher, and from dispatcher it will be routed to respective URL, and URL handles the request. So here we have request handling code. So this is where we write our request handling code. Now, how the request handles basically, from here, the request is being passed to request and response and then given to the service layer. What service layer will do? Validates the data, and then the validated data is being passed to the entity, and the entity is being given to the DAO layer. What DAO layer will do? Well, DAO layer use basically he do the CRUD code. He contains the insert update delete code, and then he via Hibernate layers he will speak to the dialect converts that to JDBC call, JDBC converts that to MySQL call, and MySQL call goes to the database. It is executed, the response is coming back to this one, and then to dialect transfers this to Hibernate entity model, and then that is being received by DAO. This we have seen yesterday, right? This entire stuff we have seen yesterday. Now today the new addition is after the response is being received. Now the response is being received. The response is never given back to the view directly. Rather, the previously we were calling the JSP page directly. Am I clear? JSP page directly, which actually calls the service layer and then showing the response. Not in Spring MVC. In Spring MVC, the rule says that even if you wanted to see an empty page also, you must request a dispatcher. Dispatcher should pass it to controller. Controller only should return you the view. Matlab, anything you wanted to see, either a data-based page or an empty page, doesn't matter. You must go and beg controller, and controller only should return you even the empty page or on the database. So this guy takes the help of someone called as view resolver to identify where these views are available, and he will go to a place where your views or JSPs are available, picks up one JSP file and then returns it back. And this JSP page returned will be given to the browser. Browser will see this. Now, sometimes we will embed the model and then give. So because we are embedding model into view, sometimes this is called as model and view. So the object what controller sees with the help of model view resolver is model and view object. So this model and view object is the key here when it comes to Spring MVC. What is he is basically he represents a JSP page or a view page that can be embedded with the data of the model. Okay, so here what is the new point here is the request always comes to controller. Rule number one, thumb rule. And even if a page has to be shown back to the browser, that can be shown only by the controller. So without controller, the client cannot see anything. So anything, even if it is an empty page, also a small JSP page or a small HTML or even a small text, anything he has to see, he must go and request controller. Controller only should return required page. Am I clear? Yes, sir. तो मतलब जैसे कि प्रीवियस मॉड्यूल में आप कॉल कर रहे थे slash amazon slash let's say slash amazon slash welcome.jsp. Now you cannot call, you have to call one URL. You have to call one URL, and that URL will return you the JSP page. And this view resolver helps the controller to find out where these views are available, and he returns the view here, and then this guy takes the help of model and view object in order to pass the data to the view, and finally he will return. Okay, so here if you see the entire burden is being taken by controller, so the name controller actually applies here. Okay, so he controls the entire stuff, so he sometimes speaks to service or sometimes directly returns the view. Am I clear? So what is that means? See, now I will expand this one. Let us say, assume, let us say you wanted to get a welcome page. So you will have to call like this. To get the welcome page, you will say http colon slash slash localhost colon 8080 slash amazon slash welcome. You will say something like this. So what is this welcome? Okay. So here welcome is a URL of a controller service method. Now the call goes to a controller. Let us say I have a welcome controller. Okay. So I would be having a class called welcome controller, who basically extends abstract controller. But here, to avoid that one, we will put on the head of this guy as a controller, specifying that this guy you are speaking is a controller. The way the servlet get on the head as web servlet, right? Similarly, this is a guy who is called as controller. Now you could actually supply a path to him at the rate request mapping. So what is the path which will be mapped to this guy? You can give any value here, but sometimes, like let's say for example, welcome controller is the class who have many service methods, and to identify this one you can have that as welcome, something like that. Okay, if not, you may not require it. Now this fellow will be having so many methods who will supply services, or who will serve. So here I will be having public model and view. See, look at this. This is return type. Return type is model and view. Get welcome page. Now, what I need to do is I need to return welcome.jsp to him. Am I clear? I need to return welcome.jsp to him. That is my intention. So here I'll say model and view MV is equals to new model and view on welcome. Now, what is that you are trying to say here? This model and view go and speak to internal view resolver. Look at the name. This guy internally resolves where the view is, how the view is, for the help of this model and view, and then identifies who is this welcome finally, and returns him. So here you have to say return MV. That's all. Okay, return MV. Now to get this welcome page, you need to have some path with like the URL welcome, right? So this welcome, which is URL, has to point here. So here on the head of this, you will say this request mapping welcome. That's it. Okay, so by saying this, you can actually see, by saying so, whenever somebody is asking I need a welcome, the caller always comes here and then land. Now this guy which you have written in a way that this guy will return model and view, he will return. Now who is this internal view resolver? This internal view resolver is supplied by your configurer. We will see how he will be. He generally will be having his look like this: internal view resolver. Resolver is equals to new internal view resolver, and then this guy resolver dot set prefix of the actual path of the file, resolver dot set suffix of the extension of the file. So this one is path of the JSP file, JSP or view file, I could say, and then this one is the extension of the view file. Okay, so what is the extension I will be having is .jsp, and where do I have all these files is slash web-inf slash. Here I can keep, but this looks very clumsy if you कौन है ये तो एक मिनट रुको यार हेलो गुड okay sorry. Okay, so we can keep in WebInf, but uh, in a project there could be so many JSP files, 50s, hundreds. Now keeping them openly will leads to so much of confusion in projects. So what is that we do? We generally keep them in a small folder called views. Okay, so in WebInf we will create a folder called views, and then we will keep all our these files over there. So here this resolver will help this guy to identify this. Now what this will become? This will become slash webnf slash views. What is the name? Welcome. What is the extension? JSP. So when you call this one, this you are actually referring to. Am I clear? So http colon slash slash localhost colon 8080 slash Amazon slash web-inf slash views slash welcome.jsp. That is a mail. Understood, right? So this is how view resolver helps this guy model and view object to identify what is the view you are looking at. And then we generally will give resolver dot set view as JSTL dot class. Uh, See, Java Servlet Template Library JSTL model is one where you can write Java JSP related script. So to identify that the kind of view we are trying to use is a JSP, so we'll set the view type as JSTL.class. So, and then once we set this, we will return the resolver. That resolver will be used by this model and view object. Till here it is clear. So when you call a controller, how he returns a page, is this part clear to you people?
Yes, sir.
तो ये रिजॉल्वर कहाँ सेट करना है वो हम लोग बाद में बात करेंगे, थोड़ी देर के बाद बात करेंगे. फॉर नाउ द फ्लो इज समथिंग लाइक दिस. Somebody will call I need this one, and that is written. So here you need a controller who is must and should even to return a small empty page. Now चलो इसमें अगर welcome page में, in this welcome page I wanted to show some name here, name. Maybe I have processed as a part of this controller. Please try to understand. As a part of this controller, okay, here I have called service DAO layers, and what do you call this? Got the username. Okay, so which is to be shown on JSP file. Assume this is my requirement. So how do I pass that name to the JSP? So what I can do, I will say mv dot add object. Look at this. How do I show mv dot add object. What is the object name? Name. Okay, comma. What is the value? So here you might have get that one. Let's say a string username is equals to input from service layer. Assume things like that. So this username has to be shown for welcome. So here you can say mirrored object of name comma username, and then you are returning MV. So what exactly you are trying to do here is you are pointing to welcome.jsp, and to him you are passing an object called username. So in the welcome.jsp, to show this, you can actually go with a JSTL script, or you could in fact simply can say script is equals to request dot get attribute of name dot toString. That's it. So here you are passing a value, and that value has been shown here. Ram, what all we can pass here as an add-on object? Anything. The answer is anything, even an entity also. The complete Pojo class, or which contains list also, or anything, any Java specific element can be passed as an object, and here you can receive it and you can deal with it. So here what happens, for example, our list of categories to be sent, right? So here I have list of category cat list, assume, is equals to, let's say, category service dot get uh, category list, something like that we have called. And then this cat list you can pass, you can say cat list and cat list. Now here what is that you can do is, in a scriptlet in JSP you can get this cat list. So you can simply say list of category cat list is equals to typecasting list of category, and then you can say request dot get attribute of cat list. Now this is what it is. So you are passing a cat list over here, which is received on the JSP page. Now you can write your for loop and then show the list of categories. So if you understand this one, JSP is not allowed to speak to service or database layers. I repeat, JSP also not allowed to go and then speak to service layer or data layer. Then who is responsible? Only this body. Controller is responsible for anything and everything. He will only speak to anyone and everyone. He will only get the data, and he will only pass the data and to a model and view object, and he will only return the model and view. Well, this model and view object with the help of view resolver is identified and written. To him, he is supplying data in this format mv.add object, and then whatever you have added to him will be received at that level using the requested.get attribute parameter. So simple. Understood, right? Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. तो
Yes,
आराम
sir.
से देखो,
Yes, sir.
we will come back to the flow a small one more time. Every request comes to one URL, one controller rule. Even if you want an empty page also, जाके उसी से भीख मांगो. Controller is the only one who can give you, and you have to go and beg him. That's all. So the controller looks like this more or less. He will be having a request mapping which will map the path, and here you can have a method also, whether it is a get method or a post method kind of stuff. And then this guy is occupied with, or he has the capability or control to return a model and view to you. So what is a model and view? An object which represents a JSP page and also has the capacity to carry the data to him. So this model and view object can help us to carry data from our controller to view. And then at the view, we will write it in this model requested get attribute and then get the data. Clear on this point? Now, if you have observed this one, second point, this has been done. What is third point? Add configuration classes to make this app Spring App MVC integrated with Hibernate. So here, what is that we need to add is, please understand, we need to add two major classes. Two. One is Amazon configuration. For example, if it is Amazon, application, Amazon configuration, and another is Amazon web initializer. So initializer help us to bring dispatch servlet as the main router. Configuration helps us to return these people, this internal view resolver. Along with him, two more are there. We will see what are they. Control X. So with internal view resolver help, model and view object identifies a JSP. And in the JSP, you can, so you understand the model and view funda. So I'll go to the configuration file, explain a configuration. So what is a configuration file is basically which makes your current project into Spring MVC and also returns required beans in order to run. Let's say it looks like this. The first annotation you need to have is at the rate configuration, which says that the current class that I am writing will act as a configuration file for this entire project. So if when you are running anything you wanted to look at the configuration, come and check in this class file. That is what the meaning is. So here when you try to get the configuration, right? The entire configuration is this file. Give me a second. I'm drinking water. See the allergy tablet that I'm taking since yesterday, right? That is making my throat dry. Like I don't know. I'm getting a feeling that my throat is getting dried very frequently. And then you have to say, Deko Bhaiya, in this configuration, enable web MVC, which tells the Spring framework that this application is a web MVC based application and this class file is a configuration file for that one. And then you have to say at the rate component scan, meaning that, so let me tell you here, Spring understands that the current application is a Spring Web MVC based configuration. Spring understands that the current class will act as a configuration file or project configuration file. And then third one, enable this component scan. Here you need to supply component scan base package is equals to this one. Now you need to say com.jokata.amazon in our case. Now saying that Spring understands that it need to create beans or it need to search for objects that are auto-wired in the current package and its subsequent child packages. Let us say, uh, for this I'm saying, a small example I'm saying, we will say at the rate auto-wired and then below we will say category service, cat service. That's all. Now what happens is Spring supplies you this object uh, using the component scan, the above setting. So you need not worry about writing a factory class and then ask to get bean kind of thing. Nothing is required. When you say auto-wide category service, now what it will do, it will go and then search for this object. And this object category service will be found in the subsequent package of com.joka.amazon.service. So what we said, for the component, whenever I am looking for a component, I require you to go and then scan this base package and all the subsequent packages. Spring will go and then fetch all of these packages, and it found there is a class called category service. It creates an object and give you. Very simple. Understood? So that is how it will work on. Now, apart from that, this Spring searches
Searches.
provide components.
Sir,
Right?
that we call na handler mapping.
Which one?
Sir, you can mapping object. First, they get the URL and then
URL and then
Hmm.
map the
map
object
the object
and return the
and return
control
the
class
control
bin ID.
class in ID.
Your voice is echoing.
Yes, sir.
I think your mobile app as well as system based app both are on.
Now, echo, sir.
No, no echo.
No, okay, sir. I talk about handler mapping, sir.
This one.
Yes, sir. Handler mapping. I think same. This is handler mapping. First, they get our URL
Hmm.
and then map the URL and return the controller class bin ID to the
Correct.
front controller.
Correct.
Yes, sir. So,
Correct. That's handler mapping only. But
okay, sir.
if I have explained you XML based thing, then I should have brought handler into picture.
Okay,
बट
okay.
वो तो फंडा चला गया, मेरे पास उतना टाइम भी नहीं है। पहले तेरे को एक्सएमएल वाला बताओ, फिर
Okay.
जावा बेस्ड बताओ, तो वो मैंने पूरा का पूरा स्किप ही कर दिया। ठीक है,
वो कंफ्यूजन था सर। ओके, थैंक यू सर।
नहीं नहीं, दैट्स हैंडलर ओनली, दैट इज बेसिकली हैंडलर।
ओके, वो एक्सएमएल में होता मतलब।
हाँ, एक्सएमएल में हम लोग हैंडलर को स्पेसिफाई करेंगे, सेइंग दैट दिस गाय विल बी योर हैंडलर।
ओके सर।
Honestly speaking, that was the older way. When it comes to the next level, when we are bringing application context into picture, it was totally different. Like, we will never configure such a kind of thing. तो ये होगा, इसमें ये हो जाता, like this one. So enable web MVC itself will bring the handler into
Yes
picture.
sir, this.
Okay, and then these components can will help us to make a Spring core, enabling all the components are available over here, and there is no need to configure a single bean. That will bring out everything. And then we will also say at the rate enable transaction management, saying that okay, all session factory, I mean it's not all session factory, the session factory bean will be transactional automatically. You need not worry about declaring that transaction dot commit kind of thing yesterday we were doing, remember? That is not required. So session factory itself will become transactional automatically. Okay, so enable components can enable web MVC at the rate configuration, and then at the rate component scan. This will help us to write your class. Now you have a class, let's say public class Amazon configuration implements. There is something called as web configuration. Okay, so here, uh, this guy, you need not worry about implementing that. By saying at the rate configuration, you have implemented it. You need to understand. तो यहाँ पे क्या करता है ये वाला? This guy helps us to return majorly 4 bean objects. The first bean object he will return in this way at the rate bean. The first bean object is our internal view resolver. This guy will return, and then there is another bean object he will return. The other bean object what we were looking at is data source object. Data source basically, which is defined with JDBC props and derived from Spring's uh, basic data source. No, it's not Spring basic data source. The better one is if you are looking at connection pooling to be handled, Apache Commons, DBCP2 basic data source. This is the guy, okay, which is defined with JDBC props. All right. Okay. So this data source is required for our session factory, because in the session factory, now we are not supplying the hibernate.config. Rather, we will supply this fellow data source. And then third bean ultimately is our session factory. So how he is supplied is this guy contains all Hibernate props, and this guy is supplied as Spring local session factory bean. The implementation version of session factory is local session factory bean of Hibernate 5. And finally, we will require a bean which is transaction. In fact, his name is Hibernate transaction management. Hibernate transaction manager. So this guy is supplied again from Hibernate, and then this guy is representing the Hibernate transaction manager enabled on session factory SF, the above session factory. So what we do, we create internal view resolver as we have seen the above part ikkada chusnam kada, the way we are, and then we create a data source. We supply the data source to session factory, and we supply the session factory to Hibernate transaction management, and that's all. Now this is what the configuration helps. And then the other class what we are looking at is a class public class Amazon web app initializer, which basically extends web app initializer. Now this guy has a there is a override method we need to do. Okay, so what that method will do here it is, okay, in that method the basic steps what we will do is we enable dispatcher servlet to handle all requests coming as slash Amazon slash. So anything coming after Amazon path, we will take it into dispatcher servlet. Clear? And then we will also supply here. We enable or initialize. The better thing is initialize. Here also you need to say, instead of enabling, you need to say initialize. You initialize dispatcher servlet. And then here we initialize web application context, just in case if you require to call context.getBean, just in case if you want. Without enabling him, component scan won't work. Okay, and then because you have this fellow readily available, so we generally, because we have initialized them, will try to write a method here, a small, you can actually we can write a small class public, a class called Amazon context. Okay, and in the Amazon context what we will write is, we'll write a public static, this return type is web application context person get context, so we will return him here. So wherever you wanted to in your class, if you wanted to get him in, let's say category is equals to, we were writing category of Amazon, we were writing Amazon क्या था उसका, Amazon factory dot get bean, and then with the name category. This is how we were writing, right? If you remember, yes or no? Correct. So in the place of Amazon factory, we need to now say Amazon context dot get context dot get bean. That's all. So get context method returns application context using which you are calling get me the bean of category, and then you will get the category. So these two classes, which is configuration and Amazon web initializer, are the both most crucial parts of the application. Without them, basically you neither can enable dispatcher nor can enable the web application context, and also you will not get the session factory, transaction management, internal view resolver, all that stuff. Am I clear? I I mean, just explain how this actually looks like. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
तो हम लोगों का करना क्या है देखो, I'll come to my application. Now we have this lib in the web of section. I will now create a small folder and whose name is called as views. And in the views, I'll try to keep my welcome page. Right click, new JSP file. And what is the JSP file I'm looking at is index.jsp. Index.jsp. Click on next and finish. So here I will say H1. Welcome to Spring MVC web application. That's all I have written. बाद में देखते हैं पूरा जो like whatever is to be implemented, we'll see it later on. Okay. So this guy src main Java. Let me create my packages. New package com dot jupata dot config. So this contains my configuration files. Right click, new package, and this guy is my controller. This person contains controllers. New package, and this guy contains factory. Like if you wanted to have factories, you can have. Okay, or you can have utils, you can have request response, you can have DO service layer and everything and anything, right? So this is initially we wanted to see the output first, and then we wanted to add the remaining people, right? Okay, so in the config I'll try to create a new class called, let us say, spring MVC config. Okay, this is nothing but my application related config, and then new class spring MVC web initializer. This guy helps me to initialize the dispatcher as well as the context. And here I will try to write one more class, spring MVC context. So this guy will help me to get the application context. Okay, spring MVC context, and then you have a controller. I will say right click, new Java class called, let's say I'll call this him spring MVC controller, the root controller, in which I will write my welcome page kind of stuff. Okay, and here is where my utils available. Well, if you want Hibernate utils and other stuff, you can write it over here. For time being, let me see up to this level. Let me see up to this level where I need to get my this one. Okay, Control S. Okay, so you know that the servlets based application have a default behavior. So the default behavior is something like, uh, it always go and search for the welcome page in the web app section. So look at this, what I'm trying to do. I am keeping this index.jsp into the top part, and in the views I'll create a new JSP file, and I'll keep this file as welcome. Okay, so whatever I have written index.jsp h1, welcome to, control X, I'll keep it over here, control S, and in the JSP file here I'll say scriptlet response dot send redirect to slash welcome. So the moment when I try to call this index.jsp, which is a welcome file, it is calling a controller slash welcome. So you will be redirected to one of the URL slash welcome. So in the web.xml, where I have a default.jsp is mentioned, I have done this part. So this is my welcome page. And whenever you are asking for welcome page, the rule of Spring is you should not return a view. A view has to be written only by the controller. So I have, instead of showing this welcome index page, I have redirected him to one of the URL that I have. And slash welcome is expected to return the welcome.jsp. Okay. So here in the controller section of controller that I have written, so I will say at the rate controller org.springframework.stereotype.controller, and here I will try to write some at the rate request mapping welcome and public modal and view org.spring framework.web.servlet.modal and view. Okay, so get welcome page. This is what we were speaking previously, right? So I will simply say return new modal and view on welcome. So I said key return this page, whatever it is, simply return, and it will actually is expected to show welcome.jsp. But कहाँ पे कॉन्फ़िगर किया हम लोगों ने ये? So rule is like, you have in index.jsp you said /welcome, so it went to welcome page, and in the welcome you are saying dear model and view get welcome. So here is the welcome.jsp. So to bring the welcome.jsp, it need to set or do something in this Spring MVC. It need to search for something. So on the head of this, what is that I said? At rate configuration. So here, Spring Framework dot, you can see this original Spring Framework dot context dot annotation dot configuration. Then I'll say at rate enable web MVC. Right. Okay. So now this is enabled with web MVC, and then at rate component scan. Okay, component scan. Where I need to go here is, I will say base packages here is equal to new string up. You can give more than one package, so we generally specify in this way. Com dot, what was my base package? Jokata is my base package. So anything coming after com dot Jokata, you go ahead and then scan all of those packages. That's what I said. Okay. पैसे दे दो. All right. So this class, and then we Hibernate we will see later. For time being, we just make sure that this guy has internal view resolver and other stuff. So here I'll say at the rate bean. Okay, at the rate bean. So what is that I'm trying to return is public. Return type is internal view resolver. Internal resource view resolver. Okay, get resolver, or I could say get view resolver. So what this guy will do, he will simply create internal resource view resolver is equals to new. Okay, and then to this I have to return this fellow. But before returning, I need to configure him in such a way that here. Okay, I have to configure him in such a way that he will help this model and view. So here I'll say resolver dot, sorry, view resolver dot, उसका ऑब्जेक्ट का नाम क्या है? व्यू रिजॉल्वर dot set view class. Look at this view class. So I will say JSTL view dot class. This is what the view I'm expecting you to return. And then I say view resolver dot set suffixes something, and there is something called as prefix also we need to set. So view resolver dot set prefix. What is the prefix we have thought? Like यहाँ पे देखो path देखो slash webinf slash views. So that was my prefix slash web hyphen inf slash views. ये था मेरा prefix. ठीक है भैया. What is your suffix? इसमें .jsp file is what I am looking at. .jsp. Control S. So That's the first component to be written by this Spring Web MVC. Clear?
Yeah. So web INF, it is ing.
किधर भैया? ओ इट्स INF. ओके. टाइप वो दोनों की आजू बाजू में तो वहां पे प्रेस हो गया था. बाप रे. Got it right? And similarly, we need to return the DB properties and then have local session factory and transaction management. Well, you could, if you say enable transaction, repeat, if you say enable transaction, you need to supply the transaction management bean in the below. So for time being, I am not enabling Hibernate here. I'm just trying to showcase up to the web MVC welcome page तक. ठीक है ना? अभी देखते हैं और क्या चाहिए हमें. We need this web initializer, right? Now this MVC config also has to implement someone. So for your convenience, basically these classes are fixed. It's not there is something you need to write differently for project based on project. कुछ नहीं होता. Am I clear? This base package name will change according to the project, but more or less they look same. So I have them with me. Would like to showcase you. Here it is. This is the one. Okay. So now what is this environment? What is this property source? We'll see this thing. Am I clear? So let me write this part for time being. I'm not setting the property source. I'm just taking only this one for your convenience. Control C and Control V, Control S. Okay. Now this web MVC configuration is ready. Well, what else is required, Ram? मुझे ये configuration से मुझे क्या मिलता है? I get internal view resolver, which is required for this controller. See, so here this model and view takes help from view resolver. Now, did I supply the view resolver? Yeah. यहाँ तक problem solved. What else is required? First of all, the request has to be routed to this welcome /welcome till here. So dispatcher is required. So where the dispatcher will be, here we need to initialize the dispatcher. So the code basically it looks like this. This guy. कुछ तो jar file missing है, if I'm not mistaken. Or the latest one is not using web application initializer. Could be the version Spring Boot select. I'm not writing Spring Boot application. I'm writing a plain old web application. स्प्रिंग वेब कौन सा वर्जन है हमारे पास? 5 years. That's basically implements. It's not extends, my mistake. Okay, so we are implementing this method on startup, and in the on startup method, basically it takes the servlet context as a parameter. What is servlet context? It is the memory where all the servlets are running. So to that memory, we are setting these two. One is annotation configurable web application context root, which is taking the scan of com.jokata dot whatever the root package that you have. Let's in our case, what is the root packages we have is com.jokata.config, com.jokata.controller. So I have given com.jokata as a root package. So from this com.jokata, any class is there, right? It will take. So it is taking the servlet context dot add listener of context loader listener on this root package. The traditional way is like, we used to configure this in web.xml. It was like this. Let me come back to this one when I explain this one. See here, in originally, I mean, isse pehle when Java configuration was not available, right? So we used to do like this. In the web.xml, we will say, context loader listener. Okay, so we will give the name of the context loader listener, and in the this XML that we were configuring, right? So there we will have to say, okay, bean ID is equals to context application context provider, and here context loader listener we will say, the class file which supplies application context. Now this one here, I will say context application context provider, and then we will say class is equals to so and so class. Okay, some class. So in that some class, we will say, let's say for example, I have a class. Now thinking that this class name is like app context provider. Okay, then the class app context provider implements application context aware. So he has the application context awareness. Now this class has a method which is a static method, public static void set app context. This is the method to which application context ctx is supplied. This method we need to override. So what is the purpose of this method is @, override. What Spring will do, first it will go to web.config file, web.xml file, and then see who is the context loader listener. So it will identify to this fellow, I need to supply my application context. And then it will see the context provider is this classes in the beans XML that we are configuring, and then automatically to this class it will identify this guy has the awareness to listen to the application context. So the application context generated by the Spring will be given over here to this one. So what we can do is, what we do is we basically on the top here private application context is equals to null, and then we simply say this dot context is equals to ctx. Now what is that we are getting from the server, I mean the Spring, we are setting it to our local, and we will return it public, the return public static application context get context, and we simply say, return this dot context. That's all. So this static, by the way, this is a static mistake, private static application context. So this is the person who supplies us application context. Now in our entire application, wherever we need to get a bin, we will have to say, let's say category cat is equals to category of, okay, this app context provider dot get context dot get bin is category. This is how we were calling in a traditional way. Traditional means not that much traditional, but where Java based configuration was not yet is been introduced, initially introduced. We were working in this way. This is the oldest model. Then what is the latest style is basically we will do it in this way. Look at this. We will say annotation configuration web application context root is equals to new annotation config web application context, and then to him we will say ki dekho bhaiya, go and then scan for this com.jokata. So from here you please supply, I repeat, from here you supply all the beans. Now I'll say servlet context add the listener of context loader listener, making that on the startup make this context as the loader listener, and the context itself will supply this guy, then the dispatcher. So servlet registration dynamic servlet dynamic is equals to, we are trying to say servlet context start add a servlet which is MVC, which is of type new dispatcher servlet, and then this guy have to load on startup as a first person and add the mapping handler mapping as slash. So anything coming after the slash has to come to this dispatcher servlet, and he will be the first person to be loaded on the startup for handling the request. That's what I am saying. So by setting up of this configuration, I have made my project ready for web MVC. And here spring MVC context.java, this guy basically will simply create this, the context you have here, right? Which the context, servlet based context, he will supply here. Now, this guy basically is the one who supplies the context. We'll see that one later on. We'll see that one. So here he'll be having code like this. Okay. Now the static one, what we have configured on the top, will be written by the static method. So anyone wants a context, then he can call spring MVC context dot get application context, and then say get bean. So something like this it will work. By the way, you need not worry about remembering all this stuff. Most of these classes are available in a fixed format. So all you need is to change only this package name when you copy the code. And this one is also same. Okay. Now that you have your classes ready, and you have welcome.jsp is also ready, and you have your index.jsp routing to dot welcome, and you have a controller who is listening to dot welcome, and ultimately, end of the story, you have your क्या नाम है उसका web.xml having index.jsp. When I run this project, I am expecting all of these components are communicating with each other and returning me final page, the welcome.jsp. So this one will be the first person. Clear? So this is the entire stuff is configuring your Spring MVC project for the first time. So expectation is I'll call index. I mean, when I say slash, and then I am coming to index.jsp, and this is what I am expecting. Let us see this. Let's see how this will work. So here in the Spring MVC, I'll say right click, run as, run on the server. Because you have called slash welcome, it says key not found. Why it is not found? Because it is behind Amazon. Slash Amazon not found. So how do I get this? What required Amazon basically, the welcome should be available. Uh, view or views. What is that we have configured here? Slash views and slash webnf slash views and .jsp is the one. Now here it has come up to welcome. It has come up to welcome, and this is controller slash welcome. It is right. This is our context. That is a problem. In the index, when we are redirecting, we should have redirected to this one. So that is a problem. Now you get it, right? So welcome to Spring MVC web application. Clear on this one? So whatever we have done so far is basically configuring our first application, seeing our welcome page. ठीक है भैया. What else is required? What else is pending is to enable Hibernate into this application. Now we have enabled Spring MVC. So we are able to get the page returned back from the controller. That means controller is able to handle the request. He received the request, and then he created a model and view object with the help of internal resource view resolver. He identified a JSP page and then returned. You can see here, this is a URL you have called, and this is a model and view which is returned for you. Okay, so step number 1 is being done. Now what is the step number 2 is yahan pe we'll come down here. Well, configuration classes are done. Now we need to do integration of a Hibernate. So to integrate Hibernate, first of all, we need to bring the properties from somewhere else. Okay, you need to bring the properties from somewhere else. Well, most of the times in the project, the people will keep their properties in the resource file, or you can supply them, right away in the configuration. So here, I'll try to write a bean over here, which will return the data source. Let's say @bean and public basic data source Apache Commons DBCP2 data source. Okay, well, this guy I will say get data source. Now this actually have to return this one, so I'll say basic data source is equals to new basic data source. Right. Now I will simply have to return this data source here. We'll configure it in a while, but for time being, this data source is required for another bean, which is public local session factory bean. Now you could actually see the local session factory bean is taken from Hibernate 5 directly, and then this is get session factory. Now this get session factory has to return this local session factory bean. I'll say local session factory bean session factory is equals to new local session factory bean and return session factory. All right. Then uske baad I need Mr. Transaction. So @bean and then public Hibernate transaction manager get transaction manager. Now this guy is okay, new and, return transaction manager. Now before returning, look at this. Before returning, this guy will be set transaction manager dot set session factory of get session factory. What is this get session factory? Is a method to which this applies, but by the way he requires it in the form of local session factory bean. So I'll simply say get object, and that's all he will be set. Now what I am trying to do is to this transaction manager I am supplying local session factory, so telling that Deko Bhaiya, whatever transaction happens through this session factory bean, please make it transactional. You automatically add commit kind of stuff. And then to this session factory dot set data source Surender dig phq. एक minute रुको यार. Get data source. By calling get data source, whatever trying to do is whatever the data source you have configured on the top, it will be supplied to him. Give me a second. Hello. Yes. Good. అవునండి. అవునండి. సార్ ఒక్క నిమిషం లైన్‌లో ఉంటారా? నేను ఆన్‌లైన్ క్లాస్‌లో ఉన్నాను. గైస్ కెన్ ఐ హోల్డ్ యూ ఫర్ 5 మినిట్స్? ఐమ్ గెట్టింగ్ ఎ కాల్ ఫ్రమ్ ఎ హోమ్ లోన్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్. ఐ హావ్ అప్లైడ్ ఫర్ ఎ హోమ్ లోన్, రైట్? So need to attend that call. Can I put
Yes,
you
sir. Yes,
hold
sir.
for 5 minutes?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'm in mute, okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
I'm on mute. That's all. Nothing. The same screen you will be seeing.
Okay,
Sir,
sir.
water break.
Where were we? Sorry for the delay. Like that's a credit manager's call, so I have to. Okay, so to this data source, सब लोग है ना call में? You are able to listen to me, able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
अच्छा ठीक
Yes,
है.
sir.
Yes, sir.
पहले पहले मेरा माफी ले लो सबके साथ, ठीक है? फिर let us continue. तो this data source has to be set with dot. देखो ये whatever is to be set we will set. Set driver class name. Some driver class name we need to set, and then what else we need to set? Data source dot set the URL. Some URL we need to set, and then data source dot set the username. We need to set some username, and data source dot set password. We need to set some password, right? So what is the driver class name? Com dot mysql dot cj dot jdbc dot driver. And then what is the URL? JDBC to MySQL protocol, which is running in localhost on the port of 3306 on the database of Amazon. And to authenticate, this is my username and this is my password. So I have told this data source ki dekho bhaiya data source, you need to connect to this database which is running in this server on this port. And these are my authentication credentials. And this is the driver you are supposed to initialize. Now this data source is supposed to be given to this local session factory bin I have given. Apart from this fellow, this guy has to be set with few more properties. Okay, so here I need to set the properties as I told you, right? So here what I will do is I'll try to create a properties file. Property props is equals to new properties, and we'll say props dot put. Okay, what is that I need to put is hibernate dot show underscore SQL. ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है show underscore SQL. If you wanted to set, you can, and you can give the value as a true. Okay, and then props dot put hibernate dot dialect. What is the dialect we have is org dot hibernate dot. The better way to do is यहाँ से copy करते भाई, spelling mistakes नहीं होगा. org dot hibernate dot dialect dot mysql 8 dialect. Control C and Control V. This is my dialect. Right? So I have set the SQL and dialect. Yeah, one more thing I wanted to say. Props dot put. No, not props. I'm sorry. So here I have set both of these properties, and I'll say session factory dot set set hibernate properties as these props. So मैंने बोल दिया कि देखो this is your data source and this is your properties which are specific to Hibernate. And then as a last step I'll say session factory dot set entity or uh, set packages to scan. What is this packages to scan? You know, if you remember the previous session factory that we have created, we have added certain configuration, set annotated class, add annotated class. Remember that one? So wherever you are writing entities, right? This Hibernate has to pick them. So you have to tell, okay, uh, packages to scan new string array of something is what you need to say. Now, you can this string array can have more than one package also, but here in my current project, I have config and controller. Now, whereas the entity, where is the entity? I do not have an entity, so I'll try to create a package for entities first. Com dot jocata dot model. I have created a package, and then I'll give that package as a packages to scan. Com dot jocata dot model. So what I am trying to specify is, for this Hibernate, I will try to write all my model classes over here, and you need to go and then scan for them in this particular this. So let's say here we will be writing our category, here we will be writing our product, we will be writing some X, Y, Z, all entities into this one. Okay, ORM objects. And then this session factory, while the time of building, it will try to go and then pick entity classes from here. That is the meaning. Now this session factory is ready. Okay, that's what we will say. And then finally,
The
this
show
transaction
spelling is
manager.
wrong.
Which one, beta?
Yeah. Hibernate.show. You had written Q instead of
अरे
W.
अरे 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 क्यू टाइप हो गया था. ठीक है, अब क्लियर है ना? ओके, देखो. So you understand this, right? So this class, sorry, this class basically helps us to return these four beans. One is the internal view resolver, then the basic data source, and the local session factory bean, and Hibernate transaction manager. Now let us see whether this Hibernate integration is working properly or not. Who knows? Like, no, I told that it is working, but who will believe it? Nobody will, right? So we'll see that one. We'll try to create a new class category. On the head of the category, I will say now we see a new person coming into picture at the rate component. Ram, what is this at the rate component? If you remember in your configuration, you have said at the rate component scan. So the meaning of this is the beans are automatically generated by the Spring framework. You need not worry about either calling new or calling get bean. They are automatically coming to you the moment when you say auto wire. Okay. So for it to auto wire a component, you have to annotate this category as a Spring framework stereotype component, and then say at the rate entity Java extract persistent dot entity at the rate table Java extract persistent dot table uh, name is equals to, what is the name, category, and then this implements serializable. Now add a serialization ID so that this object can be encrypted and be decrypted while you are passing data through your servlet to DAO. Now what else required? So we required private integer ID, private string cat name, and I would say at the rate column name is equals to ID. And then here also I'll say at the rate column name is equals to cat name. Then I will try to supply public category is a default constructor, and then will probably supply the setters and getters. And after I supply the setters and getters, on the head of the get ID, on the head of the get ID, I will supply annotation @ID Java extract persistence dot ID, and this is an auto, uh, auto increment thing. So I'll say @generated value, and strategy is equals to generation type dot identity. So my component category of type entity is ready. So this entity is there in the model. I told Hibernate while the time of generation that ki dekho bhaiya, you please go ahead and then check in that package and then fetch the component. This is what I have said. Okay. Now this component is ready. Okay. What else we require? We have a controller who has written something to the welcome page. Okay, now we'll try to see whether we are able to get data from the category or not. So we will quickly try to write @request mapping get category. Okay, so look at this @request mapping slash @category, and here I will say let's say ID. Okay. So here I'll say public model and view. Okay, get category, which will take @. Look at what I have given over here is called as a path parameter. This is called as path parameter. In Spring MVC, we can give parameters in many ways. Am I clear? In many ways. One of the way is giving the parameter as a part of the path. So you will say get category /1, get category /2, get category /3, something like that. Okay. So here I'm trying to take this path param, and whose value I am getting as ID, which is integer ID. That's what I'm getting. Now I will say model and view MV is equals to new model and view on some JSP page. Let's say, for example, category list, assume cat list dot JSP I will call return MV. Now before I return what it says, view I is missing. Okay. So before I return to this cat list page, which will be along with welcome.jsp, new JSP page, I'll try to call this fellow as a cat list. But to this category list, I wanted to supply a category. Am I clear? So here in the Spring MVC controller, I am interested in working with DO, DOIMPL and all other stuff. So I'll quickly go here and create my package com.jogata.do, and similarly would like to create a package. Right click new Java package service. We'll see IMPL next level. We will not implement IMPL. We will write the class right away in the DAO and service layer. So right click new Java class, okay, whose name is going to be category DAO. So in the category DAO, I would like to say, first of all, this guy is @repository. Now, please understand, repository is of type component only, but deals with database. Similarly, service is also of type component, but deals with service, making service calls. So on the head of the service, we will write @service. On the head of the category, we will write @repo. So here I will say @autowired session factory org.hibernate.session factory. Ram, ये क्या है? You see, this fellow will be supplied by this bean. Okay, so with the help of this bean, we are actually getting that. Am I clear? So remember this one. So now coming to the category TFO, here I would like to write one method. Public, the return type is category, get category, which will take integer ID. Now this guy has to have the try, catch, and return type of code. Look at this. Okay, so I have a category object. I'm trying to return it. Now, what else? What exactly I'm supposed to do here is I'm supposed to say session org.hibernate.session. Session is equals to session factory dot open session, and this session which I am opening. So I'll try to get the category objects. I'll say category is equals to session dot get, and you need to supply category dot class, and here I would like to supply the ID which I'm interested in. I'm looking at this ID based object. So I get this object and I return it. If at all something goes wrong, I'll print Control S. This is what Mr. DAO will do. And then because I said @repository, okay now. So how do I get instance of an object over here? Let's say where is my service? In the service, I will try to create a new Java class. Uska naam rahega category service. And on the head of this file, I'll say @component. And then this guy have the same thing, public, return type is category, get category, which will take integer ID, and all I need is return something. So look at this, the way I'm getting. I'm saying @autowired category DAO, category DAO. Now I'll simply say return category DAO dot get category of ID. It is that simple. Now this is the specialty of component scan and auto wiring. You need not worry about working with the context. They are interlinked with each other, and it automatically brings the object for you whenever you require. Okay. Now what if I wanted to get the this category object to be created manually with a new instance? Then you go with your context provider. You have your context provider, right? Here it is. Spring MVC context.get bean. Okay, that is another way. So now I have my controller. In the controller, not he is the controller. Sorry. So in the controller now I need to get the category for this ID. So in controller, I will say @autowired. Okay, category service. Category service. Now I have got the object of category service by auto wiring. I'll simply say category, which is an object model, category here is equals to category service dot get category of ID. Now ID which you have received in your parameter that you supply to service. Now you have got your object. Now this object can be given to this MV. So all you have to do is MV dot add object of this value and its value. So I wanted to give cat name, and then here as the thing I need to supply category dot get cat name. So whatever I am supplying to the model is the name of the category that I have received for the ID. Okay. And the JSP page that I have newly created, catlist.jsp, here H3, and this is category name. So scriptlet is equals to request object dot get attribute coming as cat name dot to string. Okay, so that is what I will supply. Let us see when I try to call this cat list, and I am expecting this to be loaded. So if somebody calls this controller get category, and he will return me cat list.jsp. While returning, he is adding this extra data, binding the model to the view, which is what we call as model in view. And the controller is applying the model to the view and returning the view. That's why this architecture is called as MVC, model view controller architecture. Okay, now let us see by running my project whether I get the category that I'm looking at or not. So first of all, I would like to see how many categories are there in my you know database. One, two, three, four, five. Okay, now चलो ठीक है, इसको फिर से रन करके देखते भैया. I'll come to Spring Web MVC and I am saying run on the server. Okay, so the application has taken a lot of time. Previously it hasn't taken, but this time it has taken a lot of time. This is because it has to build every one, the session factory, application context, whatever we have written as components to be loaded, right? Now it has to, poor fellow have to build everyone. And session factory is really a heavy size object, so it takes considerable reasonable time to build it. Okay, now here in the place of welcome, I would like to call get category slash one. Oops, there is an internal Spring MVC controller line number 28. Let us see what might have caused that error. We'll go to the project and expand this. ID to load is required for loading. So I've given the ID, right? Aha. Where is the code, bhai? We supplied ID, right? Why it is not taking ID? Man. That ID is coming as null, so it is unable to load. What do we do here? Okay, we'll do something like this. Okay, so here is the welcome page. Well, I am passing that as a parameter. Let us see. AH reference is equals to get category slash get category. Uh, Question mark ID is equals to 1. I have passed it over here as ID equals to 1. Get category for ID 1 less. Now in the controller, basically instead of saying this as a path parameter, I'll take this as a request param of ID, and I'll take it as an integer ID. Control S. Run on the server. See, instead of supplying it as a path parameter, I wanted to supply as a request parameter, request.get kind of thing. Let's see how it will work. We will see these different kind of elements in Spring MVC in the tomorrow session. So here you can see I'm supplying ID is equals to 1, and now category name sports. You see that one? That means we are communicating to the database via Hibernate and then getting the value as sports, because you can see for the category, this is the one sports, right? Hope you understand. Similarly, let's say if you go back to this welcome page and modify it, assume, let's say I'm trying to call for, where is this welcome, and calling the ID as 2 assume. Okay, so you could actually call based on a form also. You can have it as a form and then change the one and then get it. Either of the way you can say. Okay, so we wanted to make it, instead of saying it as a static one, form action is equals to something, method is equals to get, and this is my action. Flex, control V. So here I'll say select /select say option. One. Value is equals to 1. I have a input type is equals to submit. Value is equals to get category name. Then I will say option select ID is equals to and name is equals to cat ID. Okay. So this is what I'm supplying the cat ID. Okay. Control S. Now in the controller, instead of saying ID, I need to get cat ID. That's all. Nothing more than that. So here, whatever you are taking, you need to supply here accordingly. Yes, that's the change that I have done. So here, what is that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make this as a small form where you select whatever the category that you wanted to, and then click on get category name. It should return you the category name. Now here in the category list, when I'm showing the name of the category, I would like to include this welcome.jsp also. So when I show the category name on the top, I would like to include um, scriptlet at the rate include file is equals to welcome.jsp. I'm including that page also, and then below I'm trying to show whatever you have selected, center, and then slash center, control X, control V. See, making it interactable. So we'd like to run it one more time. Okay, so this is the one. So I'll choose the category 2 and I'll click on get category name. It will take me here, and then I have the category name as jewelry. Okay, and I'll choose 3 and then click on get category name. I get kids wear, and I choose the value 4 and click on get category name. This is mobiles, and I'll choose the 5. I'll click on get category name, which is electronics, and I'll choose 1 and then click on get category name. This is sports. See, now this is what we call as MVC application,
Yes, sir.
which is integrated with Hibernate. I mean, via Hibernate. Okay, how simple it is, right? So, majoritarily, the first part you need to work out is how do you configure this properly, this part. And once you configure this properly, right, this is a one-time effort, the way we have done now. From next time onwards, every task you need to write your relevant controller, DAO, service, service sample, XYZ. Clear on this one? Tomorrow, you will be learning a simple concept called utility, like Hibernate utils, which you will write as a generic class. So that generic class will contain this piece of code, whatever you have here, right? In this one. So every DO that you write as a part of your application will go and call that Hibernate util. That's all. Nothing more than that. You don't even write code, a single line of code also in DOs, IMPLs, until and unless you need to prepare a particular query HQL and then supply to it. Apart from that, you basically don't get into picture. The entire stuff, the total communication happens in generic class model T. T is what we call as a generic type, right? So based on that, we will write. So that we will be starting tomorrow. Instead of how do we this piece of code, how do we eliminate to write it in every DAO, DAO, wherever it is, and we will keep this code into a single class called Hibernate utils, and that class is responsible for communicating to the database and then give us the required objects. Every DAO, which is an extension of our Spring MVC DAO, will speak to him. That's all. So you will see lot of code is been reduced. Honestly speaking, you hardly see. And I will also introduce you slightly like JSTL's uh, tag library kind of script. So where instead of using requested get parameter, how do you get the values over there? Like whatever is being supplied through model and view, if you wanted to get them, how do you get them? So that part we will see. I don't remember the way we get it, but a long back I have used that one. Instead of this requested this one, you could actually get it in this way. That's all you will write. Let's see if this will work or not. I don't remember. It's been long. I never taught JSTL since almost 7 years. I'll say 5 years, 6 years. तो देखते हैं अगर ये आता है कि नहीं आता है. Control S, and I'll come back here. I'll load it. Back name, and we'll see two. Yeah, it is still coming. No, it is coming as cat name. Okay. Double quote is not required. Dollar. Yes, double quote is not required. You can simply call dollar and that symbol and you will get it. Okay, so this is the one. This is called as JSTL tag library script. Okay, so this will help you to eliminate that requested get attribute. However, you could also use this one if you want. Requested get attribute is also there along with it. Okay, so that's how it is. We'll stop it here. And when we start our tomorrow session, we will start with that Hibernate util. And then I'll introduce you something called as Service Manager and DO Manager. You know why I need to introduce? Let me explain a brief on that one. Let's say this controller, he is dealing with category service. Along with that, what if this controller has to deal with 15 more tables, 20 more tables? Then you need to write at the rate override category service, X service, Y service, Z service. So what if it requires 30 tables? Will you write all of them, right? Yes or no? Instead, we'll bring a service manager into picture. That service manager will have auto-wide category service, auto-wide X service, Y service, Z service. And we will simply get every service through that fellow. Okay, so we will be having two managers with us in the service along with that one, which is service manager as well as DAO manager. So with the help of managers, we will get DAOs or services. We will see that architecture, and we will confirm the end-to-end application which uses a Hibernate tomorrow. Am I clear? This is what we are going to do. One is introducing Hibernate tutorial. Second is you introducing the managers as a part of our application architecture. And third is developing small end-to-end application. And then that the same application I'll give you as a assignment. You please complete it over the 3 days of weekend. Enjoy your holy, followed by the application. And then by Monday, once you come back, right, we get into Spring Boot. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Chalo. Chalo guys, thanks then. Catch you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, beta. Bye.
Hello.